Hello, my name is Daniela, and my team and I are going to present the timeline of the stage 1. My team is conformed by Jael Merab, Damaris Lisbeth, Aime Alejandra, Omar Denizetti, Angel Javier, and me.
Hello, I am Daniela. I am going to present you the first part of this timeline as long as I talk about the first eras, ions, and periods of the Earth that were thousands times ago.
Stage 1: Origin of Life, Evolution, and Taxonomy. Eon hidden 4,450 to 4,000. The Earth and the solar system originate. The crust of Earth is consolidated. Its primitive atmosphere is formed. High temperatures, intense volcanic activities, and presence of conditions not favorable for life. Eon Archaea 4,000 to 2,500. End of a large meteorite falling and most ancient sedimentary rocks in 3,900 to 3,800 conditions appear for the reason of primordial soup and the world of RNA. Eon Proterozoic 2,500 to 543. Eras Paleoproterozoic 2,500 to 1,600. Large marine deposits of iron are formed. The ozone layer is formed 2,500 to 2,200. The first breathing organisms appear. Mesoproterozoic 1,600 to 1,000. Diversification of eukaryotic lineage, appearances of multicellular in algae and their diversification in the New Age. Mesoproterozoic 1,000 to 1,643. A second period of snowball Earth takes place 750. At the end of the period, Ediacara fauna appear, a kind of failed evolutive experiment or of rare animals in the age. Eon Phanerozoic 543 to present. Era Paleozoic 543 to 251. Period Cambric 543 to 505. Explosion of the Cambrian origin and diversification of almost of lineage of modern animals, or division 505 to 435. Invertebrate marine animals, trilobites, and other arthropods origin the seas. Silurian 435 to 410. Fishes appear. Invertebrates colonize land masses. Denovian 410 to 317. Amphibians appear and insect diversity. Eon Phanerozoic 543 to present. Era Paleozoic 543 to 251. Period Carboniferous 370 to 290. Reptiles appear. Large swampy forests of gymnosperms and arborescent ferns cover the north of the planet. Permico 219 to 240. The supercontinent Pangaea is formed. Origin of dinosaurs. At the end of the period occurs the largest massive extinction in the history of life on Earth. At the end of the period, mammalian reptiles originate. Era Mesozoic 251 to 65. Period Triassic 240 to 205. Large aquatic reptiles appear. Dinosaurs and their relatives, crocodiles, diversify. Turtles and sharks appear. Jurassic 205 to 138. Period dominated by dinosaurs.
Hi, my name is Omar Denizetti Gonzalez Garcia, and today we'll explain the last part of the timeline about ions and eras, from the Phanerozoic ion to the Mesozoic era, Cretaceous period to the present, and the most relevant events of evolution timeline about the century 16 to 1815. Well, starting to the Cretaceous period, which started 135 millions of years ago and ends 65 millions of years ago. This is the last period of Mesozoic era, and this period occurs of the fragmentation of the supercontinent Pangaea, the rise of plants with flowers, and their association of pollination with insects. At the end of this period takes place the extinction of large dinosaurs and large reptiles. When we start, well, we start the Cenozoic area, which started 65 millions of years ago and still do not end. Starting this area is located the Tertiary period, which ends 1.8 millions of years ago. In this period, the continents reached a configuration similar to the correct one. Also started the diversification of all the mammals and bird orders. Humid forestation diminished. The new biomes, such as steppes, bushes, and deserts, appear. In this new condition, the lineage of the large monkeys, which gives the rise of the human family, appears. And the last period of the Cenozoic area, we have the Quaternary period, which started 1.8 million of years ago and still did not end. This period is characteristic by the apparition of the human family, and at the end of the period the Homo species appears and distributes out through the whole planet and diversifies. In Europe, it generically interacts with the species Homo neanderthalis, with civilization. Hi, my name is Omar Denisete Gonzalez Garza, and today I will explain the last part of the timeline about eons and eras, from the Phanerozoic Ion to the Mesozoic era, Cretaceous period to the present, and the most relevant events of evolution timeline about the century 16 to 1815. Well, starting to the Cretaceous period, which started 135 millions of years ago and ends 65 millions of years ago. This is the last period of Mesozoic era, and this period occurs of the fragmentation of the supercontinent Pangaea, the rise of plants with flowers, and their association of pollination with insects. At the end of this period takes place the extinction of large dinosaurs and large reptiles. When we start the Cenozoic area, which started 65 millions of years ago and still do not end. Starting this area is located the Tertiary period, which ends 1.8 millions of years ago. In this period, the continents reached a configuration similar to the correct one. Also started the diversification of all the mammals and bird orders. Humid forestation diminished. The new biomes, such as steppes, bushes, and deserts, appear. In this new condition, the lineage of the large monkeys, which gives the rise of the human family, appears. And the last period of the Cenozoic area, we have the Quaternary period, which started 1.8 million of years ago and still did not end. This period is characteristic by the apparition of the human family, and at the end of the period the Homo species appears and distributes out through the whole planet and diversifies. In Europe, it generically interacts with the species Homo neanderthalis, with civilization 16th to 20th century. The size of the universe grew conceptually in the minds of astrophysics and astronomers. This growth began since the Copernican revolution late in 16th century and still little. At the beginning of the century 20, it became a vast, wide, and deep space. 18th century. Beginnings of the 18th century. The naturalists who studied the animals and plants stopped to attribute the diversity of these places to an event of divine creation. 1707 to 1718. Carlos Linneo, a creationist and physics botanist, accepted the new plant species with similar characteristics that could appear as time went by, follow sexual crossing to two deformed species, and then he creates the theory of speciation through hybridization. 1707 to 1718. George Louis Leclerc, the first person to abandon the physics. To him exist three causes by which species could be modified: diet, climate, and customs. 1735. Linneo was the one who set the rules in his book Systema Naturae in the year 1735. 1744. Jean-Baptiste de Lamarck was the first naturalist who tried to offer an explanation of the origin of life. 19th to 20th century. During the 19th and beginnings of the 20th, notable advances had been made, particularly in chemistry. 108,031. Darwin traveled for 5 years to Argentina and the Galapagos Islands, where he developed his scientific character, while studying specimens of animals that he did not know to study in a laboratory. 1831 to 1836. From 1831 to 1836, he was part of a research expedition. At each stop, Darwin had the opportunity to study and catalog the local plant and animals. 1836. Darwin returns home and he notified that among the species that he sent to examine, he is accredited with the discovery of 13 species of fishes never described. Knowing this, he had the need to explain the relationship between the species since they were too similar. 88 to 88. 2 years after his discovery of 13 new species, Darwin unexpectedly came up with the idea of natural selection. 1850. Louis Pasteur, 1822 to 1895. He designed an experiment in which he demonstrated that the organic matter sources that have been sterilized following the ionization from the environment didn't decompose.
Hello, my name is Alejandra Villarreal, and I'm going to explain from the year 1855 to the year 1927. All the things that happen in these years are very important. For example, in the year 1859, the book by Charles Darwin, The Origin of Species, was published, where it explains three aspects of evolution. These are the adaptation, the transformation, and diversification of the species. Another important development is that the Big Bang theory was suggested, but this is only an introduction to what I will say next, so pay attention. Darwin had constructed in his mind the basis of the theory. He knew he had the answer to the problem posed, but thought that he still couldn't prove it to others, for lack of evidence. This way, 20 years went by, trying to gather strong evidence that couldn't be released by critics. In since 1855, he began to write a book to postulate the theory. In the summer of 1858, Darwin received a letter from a young naturalist who had lived experience of voyage similar to his, but in Brazil and Malaysia. This naturalist, named Alfred Wallace, also began to think that species change with time and had read influences similar to or the same Darwin's. Wallace told this idea to Darwin in a letter, who, without really perceiving the difference between their ideas, hurried to finish reading the book he had begun. Wallace's letter and summary of Darwin's fundamental ideas was made known to the scientific community of London 2 months later, to give each of these place. Darwin ended up writing The Origin of the Species, which he published in the beginning of 1859, where referred to 3 aspects of evolution, that is, adaptation, transformation, and diversification of species. He can answer the intellectual change that the microbial world possessed, and in 1866 created a system of 3 kingdoms of living beings. Albert Einstein deduced that some other force, unknown at the time, something which he named a cosmic constant. Harold Urey deduced the initial compounds of the reducing atmosphere of primitive air. Early 20th century discovery of new processes which complement the selection, although some that functioned autonomously were also discovered. In 1980, French Urey proposed the independent from of existence in a first biological world based on RNA molecules prior to what is now based on DNA and RNA. Ralph Alpher and Robert Herman reached the conclusion that ancient electromagnetic waves that should still be moving throughout the universe will have a temperature of 5 degrees Kelvin at most. Alexander Ivanovich Oparin, in 1923, in The Origin of Life, Oparin proposed that life on Earth had originated in a primary atmosphere. Juan Oro, working with hydrocyanic acid, synthesized adenine. In 1924, Hubble also discovered that there exist galaxies other than Milky Way, and he dedicated all his efforts to calculate the distance between some days and hours. In 1925, Edan Chandon published a work in which he represents the diversity of living beings with a attempt where biodiversity was classified under a different assumption to that of kingdoms. The Big Bang theory was suggested in 1927 by George Lemaitre. 1 year before Hubble's evidence appeared, Lemaitre originally deduced his theory resulting from the expected consequence of Einstein's general theory of relativity.
Hello, my name is Jael Merab Aguilar Garcia, and I will be explaining period of life between the years 1928 to 1985, in which many chemical, biological, and other types of discoveries were made, like molecular taxonomy, about the universe. Some people improved books about the kingdoms of cells concerning of matter, as well as atmosphere of primitive Earth, the structure and atomic resolution, about the RNA theory and others that is found between these years. And now I will explain in detail about these discoveries.
In 1928, Carl Woese, American microbiologist, creator of the new molecular taxonomy based on the comparison between species of the so-called ribosomal RNA sequence 16 and 18 that share all living things on the planet and that has undergone little change since the emergence on Earth of the first microbiological life forms. In this year, Edwin Hubble discovered that the stillness of the universe was mere appearance. In 1938, Oparin added to and improved his book, which began to powerfully attract the attention of the rest of the world scientists. In 1939, Herbert Copeland he separated bacteria from the protista, creating for them the fourth kingdom of cells without organelles, the Monera. In 1948, George Gamow predicted that, starting from an infinitely dense unheard beginning of matter, which caused the Great Explosion, an enormous amount of photons must have been released through the cosmos. In 1953, Stanley L. Miller designed a system of tubes and flasks isolated from the exterior to simulate the hydrosphere as well as the atmosphere of primitive Earth. In 1973, Alexander made the first determination of an RNA double helix structure at atomic resolution. This was followed in 1974 by the solution of the L-shaped structure of a transfer RNA molecule, which was made simultaneously by Rich Smith Group and Aaron Close Group at the Medical Research Council Laboratory of Molecular Biology in Cambridge, UK. In 1977, Carl Woese studied the sequences of nucleotides of genes originating from a diversity of species representing all kingdoms. In 1980, the evidence in favor of the RNA theory came. In the 1980s, when small RNA molecules were discovered in living things. In 1985, Lynn Margulis, in collaboration with Carlen Schwartz, she published a book titled Five Kingdoms. Keywords.
Hello, my name is Damaris Lisbeth Garcia Montemayor. Then I will talk about the keywords, which are Big Bang, which is a model that describes how the world expands. Chemical evolution is the formation of organic. Big Bang, cosmological model of the observable universe from the earliest known periods through its sequential large-scale evolution. The model describes how the universe expanded from the initial state of extremely high density and high temperature. Chemical evolution, the formation of complex organic molecules from simpler inorganic molecules through chemical reactions in the oceans during the early history of the Earth, the first step in the development of life on this planet. Biological evolution, any genetic change in a population that is injured over several generations. These changes may be small or large, noticeable or not so noticeable. Darwin described it as descent with modification. It is regarded as the process whereby heritable traits change over successive generations. Taxonomy, branch of biology that classifies all living things. It was developed by the Swedish botanist Carolus Linnaeus, who lived during the 18th century, and his system of classification is still used today. He also developed a classification system called the taxonomy hierarchy, which today has 8 ranks from general to specific: domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species.
Hello, my name is Ángel Javier Castaña Capetenache and this is my part of the timeline. I am going to explain the kingdom. Well, in itself, the kingdom represents each of the great taxonomic subdivisions. I will also explain the supernova, which is a phenomenon in the stars. Later, I will tell you that the process that results from adaptation is called natural selection, and in the end, that evolution is the chain of characteristics of a beginning by various factors such as time and other factors.
Kingdom. Taxonomic rank that is composed of smaller groups phyla. Is highest taxonomic rank or the most general taxon used in the classified organisms. The five kingdom taxonomic classification of the world is Abiora in the kingdom Animalia, Plantae, Fungi, Protista, and Monera. Supernova. The supernova sounds like a superhero, but it refers to the super explosion of a star. A nova also the explosion of a star, but a supernova has a more energy. A supernova happens when a star becomes bright boson and its matter is scattered in the directions while light and the radiation shutting out. Natural selection. It is the process that results in the adaptation of an organism to its environment. By means of selectively reproducing chains, it is genotype, or genetic constitution. In natural selection, choose variation in the genotype that increase an organism's chains of survival and procreate and preserve it and multiply from generation to generation at the expense of less advantageous variations. Evolution. It is a change in the characteristic of a species over several generations and realities of the process of natural selection. Biological phenomenon common to all living things, even though has led to their difference, and is widely used in a variety of disciplines and contexts, often with different meanings.